Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to talk about a fascinating topic, which is the Hasidic movement. This movement had a huge impact on the Jewish world and the way it looks in the last 300 years. 1,000 years ago, when you would say in Jewish tradition, someone who is a Chassid, you were referring to someone who does more than is required from him from Jewish law, someone who does extra. Today, when you say Chassid, you're referring to someone who is part of the Hasidic movement and part of one of the sects. This movement started in the 18th century in Eastern Europe, and it brought joy back into Judaism, helped a lot of people remain Jewish in light of the Reform movement that will begin soon in West of Europe. And here are 10 things that you should know about the Hasidic movement. The first thing you need to know is the background of this movement. So in the 17th century, Eastern Europe Jews are suffering greatly after terrible massacres and pogroms are done by Khmelnytsky in 1648, 1649, and there's also a lot of blood libels. So Jews are really in a dire situation, and many of them also are in terrible, terrible poverty. Aside from the physical destruction, there's a huge disappointment from the false Messiah, also in the 17th century, Shabtai Tzvi, who led many Jews to believe in him, believe that he was the Messiah, and he was entrenched in Kabbala. After his forced conversion to Islam and realizing that he is a false Messiah, European Jews are completely disappointed. So because they were so poor and working so hard to make a meager living, being connected to the Torah world and to the Jewish world was really a challenge. And there were very few elite students who were Torah studies and part of the rabbinical world, and while they were connected, the average Jew was not connected intellectually or spiritually to God, which is what the Hasidic movement sought out to change. Who started this movement? Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer, also nicknamed the Baal Shem Tov, the one with the good name, was a poor orphan born in 1698. And at first he was anonymous till age 36. He studied with a group of Jewish mystics, and he went from community to community and traveled and developed a reputation of being a holy man and a healer. At age 36, he became more of a public figure and was surrounded by students that sought out to learn from him. When the Baal Shem Tov died in 1760, he was succeeded by his student Rav Dov Be'er, also known as the Maggid from Mezerich. Maggid from Mezerich took a lot of the Baal Shem Tov's ideas and further developed them and make them into more of an organized establishment with students. His students established different branches inside the Hasidic community and formed their own new dynasties. One of his famous students is Rav Shneir Zalman from Liadi, the founder of the Chabad Lubavitch sector. He was the first in 7 Chabad rabbis, the last one being the Lubavitcher Rebbe who lived in New York. While they're all part of the Hasidic movement, each of these dynasties has a little bit of a different emphasis on different things. Like, one will put more of an emphasis on prayer. And unfortunately, many of these Hasidic dynasties were destroyed in the Holocaust, but there are many that exist today, even hundreds. The Hasidic sects today, like Belz, Tzanz, Kotsk, Satmar, Lubavitch, Skvar, these are names of communities that existed in Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, and went with them to the communities that they lived in today, New York and in Israel. The biggest Hasidic groups today are Gur, Chabad, Satmar, Belz. They each have their own distinct customs and even their own distinct dress code. While there's some dress code that most of Hasidim will wear, there are also distinct clothing items that will enable you to identify a specific sector. Basically, these Hasidic groups kept the dress that was used by Polish Lithuanian nobility living at the time. Until today, they wear certain items that were used back then. Very famous examples is the strymel, which is a fur hat that they use to wear on Shabbos and on Jewish holidays and special events. So the gartel they wear, which is sort of a belt that they wear during prayer times. And then there's also more distinct characteristics. There's a lot of dress code and customs that go into each sector. We're going to talk now about 4 core principles and values of the Hasidic movement and what they sought to renew in Judaism. But it's important to note that it's not that Judaism didn't have these things already existing, but the Hasidism brought in some new life and new joy and a re-emphasis on a lot of important things that already existed in Judaism, but Hasidim brought in some new life and revived these ideas that already existed. The first core concept is that Hashem wants the soul, wants the heart. It's not just about performing the mitzvot, but it's about the enthusiasm behind it. Doing it with enthusiasm, doing it with life, with joy. So happiness and joy is a very important part of Hasidism. The second one is emphasizing spirituality in everyday life. God is everywhere, and we have an opportunity to connect with Him and be one with Him at every given moment. Even the deeds of a simple Jew, if performed correctly and with the right intent, can be equal to that of a huge scholar. It's not about how knowledgeable you are or smart you are, but how much you connect with God in your everyday life. The third one is the concept of a tzaddik, a spiritual leader that you connect with. Each dynasty has generally a spiritual leader and a demor, a great rabbi that people can connect with and use him to help them connect with God. The fourth concept is the idea of taking very deep Kabbalistic principles and teachings and teaching it to masses of people. Up till that point, Kabbala was something that was taught to a select few of great scholars, and now is the time to take these great principles and great ideas and in a simple language try to enable masses of people access to it. The last thing you should know about Hasidism is that it had great opposition inside the Jewish world. As it spread rapidly among Eastern European Jews, many inside the Jewish world opposed it greatly. They were known as Misnagdim, which means in Hebrew, the opposers. And one of the main figures of this opposition is the Vilna Gaon. He himself, a brilliant scholar, knew physics, Kabbala, mainly from the fear that this mysticism and Kabbala and different teachings will cause, God forbid, another false Messiah like the terrible one we had with Shabtai Tzvi, who also was deeply involved in mysticism and dangerous practices. Instead of learning Torah, they were more focused on the joy and singing and dancing. Times when it came to prayer times in Judaism, we have very specific times you're supposed to pray. So they sometimes prayed in different times or later than what was required, and they would base some of their customs on more Kabbalistic principles instead of on the more traditional Jewish law, which also made them fearful that this was a dangerous, slippery slope. So thankfully, even though initially it caused a split in the Jewish world, sometimes excommunicating one of the communities or not marrying each other, it did not eventually caused a real split in Jewish world. Many of the fears of the Misnagdim about the Hasidim and their dangerous paths never materialized. And today, while not everyone is part of a specific Hasidic sector, most Orthodox Jews will study their concepts, study their books, learn about Hasidism. It definitely became a very mainstream part of the Torah that we learn. Eventually, Hasidism made Jewish life much stronger and ready for the attack that was about to come from Western European, which is the Enlightenment and the Jewish Reform movement. If you like this video, you might like a video I made about the Jewish Reform movement and the Enlightenment that came from West Europe. So definitely go check out that video. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. See you next time.